So next up for Wailing in the Caverns Mini-Set, we have Paladin. So let's take a look. We have a new secret, so appropriate for Secret Paladin dominating lots of the ladder of the expansion and being a big focal point. We have a new one to add. So this is Judgment of Justice. When an enemy minion attacks, set its attack and health to 1. So when I first looked at this, I was like, oh, that's pretty powerful. Kind of a 1 mana reducer minion. But the fact that it's a secret really makes this kind of easy to play around. So this also happens when, so this, unlike Reckoning, which happens after, so Reckoning happens after a minion deals 3 damage, then the effect procs, whereas this happens when it attacks. So you could have things where this happens and then Reckoning doesn't proc. But the other thing is this, you could attack with a 1/1 and it would still happen. It would be the same, and then this secret wouldn't do anything. So I think for that basis, that makes it kind of awkward because it's much easier to handle and deal with as opposed to Reckoning. Reckoning is guaranteed to always get a hit on a minion that's big enough. And from personal experience of playing around Reckoning, for some decks that's a problem because you don't have an opportunity or a moment to proc it with something smaller, and then it's guaranteed to get that big hit. So then you sort of sometimes have to wait to make sure you get a trade on it for that to work, and that can be awkward. Whereas this I guess would work similarly well against those types of decks where they don't have many minions, but for decks where they have a wider board and they have a smaller minion, they could attack with a 2/1 and then that gets reduced to a 1/1. And another thing to note, it is a holy spell like Reckoning. So kind of the strongest secret builds that I see tend to be running 2 of the Galloping Savior, because it's not a holy spell, and 2 of the Oh My Yogg, it's a shadow spell. So them you don't draw with your Knight of Anointment, which is a big deal because you don't want to be drawing them. You want to be drawing your Hand of Adals or in particular these days Conviction, which is just overpowered. So I think this edition as a secret, it's okay. You get some synergy for the fact that, maybe you play this and Reckoning, but then you wouldn't want to be playing all of those holy spells either. But maybe if you're playing a wider variety of secrets, then this is just another thing that they have to play around. So that's kind of interesting. But maybe that would have to be a bigger secret build for that to make sense, which would mean, a lower value deck, which isn't the way Paladin's going at the moment. Paladin's kind of getting bigger with N'Zoth packages and Librams, etc., as opposed to the kind of aggro, which has lost some ground since the Crab Rider nerfs. And they've just had more nerfs as well. Hand of Adal now only buffs +2/+1, so less health, less sticky, and First Day of School has been nerfed again for a second time, so it only gives you 2 1-cost minions. So yeah, I'm not sure this one seems much play. Next up we have the Seed Cloud Buckler. So another weapon, and we're starting to get quite a lot of weapons in Paladin. We have the Sword of the Fallen, of course, for secrets, which is pretty standard these days. I don't see many Paladin decks that aren't running that weapon, and the secret package, because it's just much harder to play around for your opponent. And again, we're not playing the completely full aggro buff package, which we were for a time because of the eggs and Crab Riders, but since the Crab Rider nerf, there's not as much justification for running that package. So generally we are running Sword of the Fallen. So then if you're running this too, does that mean you're not playing the later one, the Hammer of the Naro? But you really should be playing Hammer of the Naro because it's the nuts. It's incredible amount of value and power in a card. And then if you're running the Libram package, then you're running Libram of Justice, which is a weapon, and then you're also potentially running Libram of Judgment as a weapon. So there is a lot of glut. So I don't think this fits in the Libram package because of those extra weapons. And then if you are running it for the effect in a more tempo-based kind of or value of the N'Zoth package, probably only a one-off. You could probably only ever afford to play this as a one-off. maybe there's some super aggro version that doesn't even want to top out at 6, but like for the most part in Hearthstone these days, you have to run a bit more late game. The kind of true aggro decks don't really work anymore because Priest is in the meta, so Priest will be able to outvalue super aggro kind of stuff. And they'll be able to heal up enough, that is. So an interesting card. The effect is powerful, giving divine shields. You could also, you could always maybe play your Sword of Fallen, play this, and then maybe the second Sword of the Fallen you draw, you could use to proc this early, to get the divine shields early. So there's definitely possibilities. But I just think there's so many weapons in Paladin that I'm not sure there's room for this to fit in. And then the third card for Paladin we have is Party Up. So Party Up, summon 5 2/2 adventurers with random bonus effects. So if you've seen some of these adventurers, they're kind of the standard choices that you might get with Kazakus, or they describe them as the core words from the core set. Poisonous, Divine Shield, Spell Damage, Lifesteal, Rush, Stealth, Wind Fury, and Taunt. Kind of a range, and if you build a board with these, you might get some stickiness with Divine Shield, you might get some Rush to help clear the board, and then maybe if you're running brooms, which you do in some of the versions of Paladin at the moment, maybe this card gives you more impetus to make sure you still run broom if you weren't before. You can put your brooms in and then maybe get the poisonous, and then you can trade on to a minion with that, and that would be powerful. So getting the range of the 5 with broom would be quite good, because maybe get lifesteal. Stealth is sticky as well. Spell damage isn't really relevant in Paladin, but could be useful, I guess, if you're running something like Consecrate. I'm not sure where you would be, but potentially. But there's range for this to kind of get value. If you compare this with the 6 mana Druid or Shaman card that makes 4 totems, and that card saw some play, but that's also because you can activate some Rush with it. So it's a board, it's another wave of threats. And maybe you can afford to play one of this in Zoth Paladin, because it's another activator. Maybe if you haven't got a 6 mana card, maybe this can make your 5 mana mech corrupted, so that it becomes that 8/8 with Divine Shield and Taunt. So maybe a one-off. It's an interesting card. It's just generally a bit slow. You are getting 10/10 of stats, but a board of 2/2s is easier to deal with generally than a big, not big. Big boys are hard, easy to deal with too, but kind of middling stats. It's not sure. I'm not sure whether it finds much space in Paladin at the moment, which is already really airtight. But it's a value, and it's kind of late game extra wave of threats. So potentially. I guess we'll have to see how much of an impact all of the different stats have. Maybe if you have 5 of these, then it does end up having quite a lot of range and then potential value. But that's it for Paladin. Paladin, kind of meh. I don't think any of these cards are super powerful, but Paladin's been in such a strong position, especially on the ladder at least, that I think it's kind of a welcome sight for them to not get too overpowered. But I think there's potential. In particular, the Secret will occasionally see play. The weapon might see a little bit of tuning to make sure that works. And then Party Up, probably the least likely to see play, but potentially it's just one of in a extra threat in a Zoth Paladin. And that's it for Paladin.